What's up, everyone, and welcome into the Buffalo Sports Collective. It is Friday, January 31st, 2025. As always, I am PK alongside my co-host Phil for episode 330. For everybody with a higher degree, that's 330. Phil, it's better intro. Our producer said he was listening to the episode, and he burst out laughing for the intro last episode. It was a very sad show. But we're going to do some cleanup for the Bills today. We're going to go over how our bold predictions before the season went. Little teaser. Somebody did really well. Somebody did really bad. And we got a Sabres game to go over and a Bandits preview. We're back, finally. And then we're going to go on another break next week. But Phil, how it was your long week of... You started in solitude on Monday. You went back to work on Tuesday. So how was getting through the rest of the work week, knowing that the Buffalo Bills season is completed and you won't see meaningful Buffalo Bills football until next September?
Yeah, it was not great. Not great. I mean, a lot of people that I work with were talking about the game and everything. And even I brought it up, like, what are your thoughts? I've been thinking. So had similar conversations over and over and over about the game, about everything. It seems like the general, at least from the people I talk to, which are all Buffalo people, but even still, usually with the Super Bowl, there's one team you like, one team you don't. It seems like the general consensus is nobody wants anyone to win this Super Bowl. Nobody wants to watch this Super Bowl. And obviously, I personally hope Philly wins, but also after seeing what Philly fans did after their last win between the gun being shot off in the crowd and the heckling of the Washington fan who was just trying to leave the game after his team lost in playoffs. It makes me not want to cheer for them at all. I don't mind the Philly players. I like Barkley. I've never had a problem with Hurts. A.J. Brown is fine. So I like their team players. I don't love their fan base after seeing some of the stuff that's come out. But my dislike for the Chiefs is much higher than that, I guess. I think, I don't want to sound cocky, I guess, or overly confident, but I feel like the Bills now, which is weird to say, I feel like we're at the point where the Patriots were, as far as it's hard to get amped for the season now. I feel like I want to skip everything. Like, just get me back to playoffs. Like, just get, like, it's going to be such a long, drawn-out process, even the entire season, to get me back to playoffs. Like, I need to be back. I need the chance again. I need the opportunity to go to a Super Bowl, get me back to playoffs. I feel like that's how the Patriots were for so many years when they just dominated the AFC East. Like, even their fans didn't seem to care at all about the season because they were pretty much guaranteed the AFC East. And then once they won that, they were just waiting for playoffs to kick around. And that's where I feel like I am as a Bills fan now, because they've been to so many playoffs in a row and they've won the AFC East 5 times, and the AFC East looks like a bit of a joke right now. I'm sure that's what the Patriots were feeling like as well for so long. So yeah, I feel like it's going to be very, very, very long of a process and a wait to get this feeling and this bad taste in your mouth out. Like, it's just going to be, like, obviously I'll care about the regular season games. Obviously they're important, everything like that. But all you're ultimately wanting to do at this point is get back to playoffs, get back into the hunt. And it's so long from that. So it's going to be a sad, long wait.
Yeah, you got nearly a year, so
Yeah.
We'll kind of transition this into the intro and then continue with the Bills here. You can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, and TikTok at Buffalo Sports Collective, and on X and Blue Sky, Buffalo Sports Co. Don't forget to follow our channel wherever you listen to podcasts. We're also on YouTube. I like to throw that out there because when people hear podcasts, they kind of forget that YouTube is also another outlet for that. If you want to get the video version, that's where you got to go. You can check out our check out our website at buffalosportscollective.com. My power rankings were dropped on Thursday. Check those out. A lot of movement. I'll give you a little teaser. Bandits are still number one. You can check out our store on our link tree or on our social media sites or at the top of the website by hitting the shop tab. You can represent our company on the go and look for the time breakdowns in the description of the show. Little Saturday or Sunday cleanup, because if you listen to the episode, it was fresh off their loss. It was maybe 15 minutes we record after their defeat. So we kind of said it was going to be a lot of raw emotion during that game. You kind of got it. But Friday would be anything that we kind of missed and more of a cleanup. I think I was able to process it. I think maybe Monday I was kind of in my anger phase. I don't think I said anything I regret, but I might have pushed it to the line. So I'll tie it up like this. Josh Allen deserves some blame. He failed to lead the team on another drive. Last year he came up short. They resulted in a missed field goal, but the ball was in his hands. Going down, could have led a game-winning touchdown drive. This game, 3:33 left on the clock, 3 timeouts, down 3, a lot of threes, and he failed to come up with that again. Kincaid deserves blame.
I think Brady also needs to be in that final drive.
Yes.
Play selection seems to be
Brady
to be rough.
Yes, he's on my list as well. Kincaid, there was a lot of talk about him being hurt. And a lot of the players came to his defense by saying, hey, he probably shouldn't have even been playing in that game. Well, to me, if it's that bad and you're hurting that bad that it's affecting your game, should you even be out there? Like, if you can't stop, turn around, and get under a lofted up ball, maybe you shouldn't have been playing in that game at all, and maybe that should have been Knox running that route. Players that needed to step up didn't. Rousseau was horrible. He couldn't set the edge. Epinesa was MIA. Miller, this was a game that you signed him for, and I know a lot of it is due to his age and the injury that he suffered. He took almost 2 years ago now, more than 2 years ago now, and he hasn't been the same player. He was missing. Hamlin was horrible in this one. Coleman and Cooper were just missing. I mean, I think they combined for 3 catches? Way too many. This team this year, and I like to remind everybody that they were in a quote-unquote retool, but when you're in this far and you're 1 game away from the Super Bowl, we kind of got to pull that away a little bit. They have a lot of good, not great players, and that is not going to get it done. I think Brandon Beane needs a lot of blame in this one. He drafted Kincaid. He drafted Coleman. And yes, Coleman, rookie year, I get it. He drafted Elam. All misses at the moment. He nails the late round picks, but you need to be able to draft well in the first and second rounds, because otherwise you result in this where you have a bunch of players on your team that are good, not great, and that's coming back to bite you. McDermott, yes, I do not blame him much at all for this entire season and this entire playoffs, but this is where I'm at this point. And yes, it's probably the wrong year to do this, and I think I was getting a lot of pushback from our group chats on my stance here, because I think I picked the wrong year to reach this level. And I think it was there partly last year, and I think he bought me back in. But it's been 8 years, 0 Super Bowls, 2 losses in the AFC title games. And like I said, I know it's a bad time to call for change after what we just saw this year, but I think I've switched from what I was at on Monday, saying that I think they need a change, and I think I was talked into they need a time limit on this, because what we saw this year is not good enough. What we have seen the last 7 years is obviously not good enough. No head coach in the modern day Super Bowl has won a Super Bowl with outside of the first 5 years of coaching. Sean McDermott is going to be going into year 9. He has yet to reach a Super Bowl. That's never happened. No head coach has ever reached a Super Bowl after not doing it the first 5 years. Every other coach that was hired before him or at the same time as him, which was Shanahan and McVay, both of them have been to Super Bowl and one of them has won it. So I'm personally, and I understand that a lot of people are not blaming Sean McDermott for this loss whatsoever. I'm not blaming him for this entire year. I've loved him this year. I thought this was one of his, if not best years coaching the Buffalo Bills. So again, I understand why there's going to be pushback on this, but I am worried that the fan base and partially the front office organization here is afraid to make any type of waves or moves because of what has happened in their history of the 17-year drought. They know how bad it can be, and I'm not saying they're settling, but I'm not saying that they're willing to push all their chips in the middle of the table and say, like, okay, when is that time then? Because 7 of 8 playoffs he's made, 5 straight AFC East titles. But it's just, to me, when is it that you need to level up? Like, when is... And our one friend was like, yeah, but they were like 2 or 3 plays away from the Super Bowl. And I went, yeah, but that's been the case for how many years now? Like 13 seconds. Yes, I understand that it was in the divisional round, but everybody's saying, hey, you beat the Cincinnati Bengals, you're in the playoffs. You're 1 or 2 plays away. Last year, 1 or 2 plays away. This year, 1 or 2 plays away. When are you going to be the team that is those 1 or 2 plays ahead of the other team? Like, to me, that's just where I'm at. Is I understand no moves are going to be made. Heck, even the special teams coach is coming back, which I just think he deserves to be fired years ago. But it's just, and I'll say, I know he's not getting fired this year, and I know Brandon Beane's not getting fired this year, but I need to know, okay, you have another year to get this done, to get to a Super Bowl. I'm not even asking him to win it. You just have to be in it. And it just hasn't happened. So to me, it's less about when you're doing it. I just need a timeline on, hey, if this isn't done by 10 years, is that good enough for fans to start questioning the leadership? Is it 15 years? Is it 20 years? Like, I personally think he has a lifetime contract. I don't think he's ever going to get fired unless he has like 3 or 4 horrible seasons in a row, or whatever dirt Matt Smiley has on him is uncovered. Like, that's the only way he's going to be ousted as Buffalo Bills head coach. To me, it's just, I am afraid that the ownership and the fan base is settling for good, not great, similar to what their players is. Shouldn't the end goal be to reach a Super Bowl? And you failed how many straight times? And yes, not his fault. The players need to step up, and he was let down by the coordinators. But even Andy Reid was fired in Philly. That's all I'm going to say. Like, there comes a time where, hey, even though this is really, really good and we know how bad it can be, the ultimate goal is to raise that Lombardi trophy. And if you're not even in the game to do it, when is it time to maybe do a little shakeup? And I understand, bad year to do it, but that's why I have this show and you don't.
Yeah, I mean, as far as the positive spin on everything he's done is pretty much you've lost to the Super Bowl champs the last couple of years. So not only you're not going to the first round and getting bounced, like the team you're losing to is the number 1 team in the NFL, and everybody knows
everyone else is losing to.
Right. So everybody's losing to this one team, and that's the team you can't beat. Well, guess what? No one in the NFL can beat that team. So it's I understand that's the team you want to beat, and that's the team you have to beat, obviously, in order to get to a Super Bowl and win it. But right now, like, they are the elite team of the entire NFL. Nobody can do it. So it's like the harshest criticism you can put on a coach is, well, why can't you beat the Super Bowl champs? Like,
oh, I'm on a hill all by myself.
No, I know.
And it's a tiny little mound. Yeah.
But as far as that hill, like, I do agree. I mean, over the next, I would say, definitely next season, obviously, like you said, he's not going anywhere. But 2 years, I would say, is your new judgment line. Like, next year is supposed to be this massive reset, even though, like you said recently, like, the salary cap doesn't really help them that much. Like, yes, they get some breathing room. It's not negative/nothing like they had this offseason, but they can't change the world in this offseason. It's still going to be more slightly better good players, not great. Right. It seems like what they're going to be able to bring in, unless they do firing someone, trading someone, some kind of moves elsewhere. It doesn't seem like they're going to be able to, change the world this offseason just because they have a little extra money. But I do think a 2-year window is what you should give them. Like, next year, they should be able to bring something in this offseason to help the team. And what you and I didn't like, and why you and I thought this was the year they needed to go, was because now next year, all the pressure comes right back to the Bills. Like, everyone thought they were going to be terrible this year. Everyone's going to do a complete 180. And now that the Bills had a great season, went all the way to the AFC Championship again, barely lost to the Chiefs, weren't embarrassed, and that was supposed to be a down year. Now you're going to be able to retool in the offseason, and the just expectations for this team are going to go right back through the roof, and that is not when this team seems to excel. They don't seem to like the pressure on them. They don't seem to like the expectations of you're going to the Super Bowl. Like, they seem to play much better. Like Josh Allen even said on TV after the Ravens game, everybody counted them out. Everyone thinks they're too small. They're not good enough. They just put their heads down, worked hard, and was able to win that game. Like, that's the kind of Bills football that they like to play and need to play. I think they're going to be not in trouble. They'll be fine next year, but they don't like playing with that. They don't seem to like playing when they are the odds-on favorite by Vegas to win the Super Bowl. So I do think the next 2 years to me are going to be interesting, but I think to me, like, give them 2 more years, and then that after that 2-year window needs to be an evaluation of, okay, what did we do these last 2 years? Is it truly the players, or is it the coach? Is it some kind of combination? What can they do to make it better? But I mean, something we've said for a little bit now is, like, if Andy Reid was on the Bills, do the Bills win? Like, do they have the team and quarterback, because he's obviously amazing, to win if Andy Reid's the head coach? And I understand he's one of the best head coaches ever. He's going to the Hall of Fame. He's got tons of Super Bowls, going for a three-peat. Like, I get it. He is, again, same thing with Kansas City. They are the team. He is the coach right now in the NFL. Like, that's who you want. But if you switch coaches, I think the Bills are able to win these games against Kansas City, and Kansas City would be the down team. And no offense to Mahomes, but it's the same thing to me with Mahomes and Allen. If you put Allen on Kansas City and brought Mahomes to the Bills, I think 100%. You're in the same situation. Then Kansas City keeps winning with Allen, and the Bills keep losing with Mahomes. Like, I think it's the head coaches, not necessarily the QBs, even though it's always Mahomes versus Allen. Like, I think the head coaches have a bigger deal in this rivalry that is pretty much never brought up. But I do agree with the 2-year window. I think that's fair. I think next year should be, in theory, some kind of retooling. We'll see what they can do. I completely agree. To me, right now, because it was supposed to be a retooling year, I do think Bean, to me, is the biggest one on the hot seat. I don't think he's going anywhere anytime soon either. But he's the one I've had the most issues with. Like you said, amazing at finding depth and value, even with his free agents that he can sign out of nowhere for $1 million, that this veteran who was tossed aside by another team and all of a sudden comes into the Bills and is a bona fide starter and is amazing. And he's really good at finding that value talent, but how he keeps striking out in the first round when those are supposed to be the rounds that are easiest to hit on is just unacceptable. Like you said, Kincaid really didn't step up at all this year. You'll talk about that in a moment. Coleman, I cannot believe, like, it's so frustrating because we talked about the other day. Brian Thomas Jr. was 2 picks away from Buffalo, and instead of going up to get a true
with the Jags, who had
one,
a terrible general manager that all the head coaches were like, hey, we're not working for this guy, and then they fired him, you couldn't have traded with that general manager. You
2 picks ahead of you. Just 2.
Yeah.
2. You wouldn't have to give up much to go get him.
First and a third, baby.
And you would have had your wide receiver 1 for years to come. And this is, I know Coleman's a rookie, like, we'll give him time, but he's not ever going to be a true wide receiver 1. He's just not. And Brian Thomas Jr. went out there with Mac Jones and looked elite, beyond elite. He was arguably the best rookie wide receiver up there with Neighbors in the entire class this year, and they looked amazing. And you missed that by 2 picks, and it is going to haunt me forever while that man just tears it up in Jacksonville. But I mean, and then Elam got absolutely torched, and is like, I really don't think he's going to be on the team next year. I don't know how you can keep him after that.
I don't know. They kept him on the field, so I don't know how they're going to.
I don't know. But again, I mean, talking about depth, Cole Bishop had led the team in tackles in that game. He looked fine. Like, he's a rookie, but he's more of a depth guy and more of a, not depth, but he was a lower round pick that is a good value that they found. But he just keeps striking out.
Second, but I get
but still, like, the first round, like, even James Cook, second round pick, fantastic.
Yeah.
First round picks, he has no idea how to do it, and I don't know why. I don't understand why he cannot hit on what theoretically should be the easier of the picks, and yet somehow he misses them. And like you said, the biggest thing outside of that to me is that the roster is full of good, not great players. Like, how many people made the Pro Bowl from the Bills? 0. And I know the Pro Bowl isn't everything, but it just kind of goes to show that the entire NFL thinks no one on the Bills is really that good. Yet somehow as a team, they put it all together. And obviously, Allen is a huge reason for that. Obviously, Allen is fine. He probably should have been in the Pro Bowl. But the rest of the team was not brought up in the slightest. And yes, James Cook is also fantastic. But again, it's just good, not great talent, and that's not going to be enough to get you into a Super Bowl.
Yeah, speak on Bean really, really quick because I know we're trying to get through the Bills and stuff. I will say it is harder to nail late first round picks, which the Buffalo Bills have been playing in and picking in a lot, which is another reason why I think you should move your first round pick this year for more now talent, i.e., Myles Garrett, Matt Crosby, any of those type of players. But second, it's not like you were just waiting and these players fell into your lap. Like you went out and traded up for Elam and Kincaid. You went up and got both of those players, and they have not panned out. And that's part of my issue is I don't think Bean is getting enough criticism either.
And again, it's because I think he's being covered by Allen. And B,
Allen
his
does a great job of
covering
making everybody else look good. That if he wasn't on this team, these two, McDermott and Bean, wouldn't be there. And again, I'm not calling for their firing right now. I understand why it's not going to happen, especially after a season where you got back to the AFC Championship. But there needs to be some sort of timeline on this because there's way too many good, not great players on here, and I feel like we're at the point where we're settling for good, not great results. That's just me. But we'll go over our bold predictions real quick. Phil did really well this year. So the Bills offense will work. That everybody eats. I would agree that did work. Congratulations, Phil. Von Miller gets to 8 sacks. He gets to 6. So I'm going to give you almost 100% on that because I wasn't expecting anything from Von Miller this year. Just so to be second on the team with 6 sacks, I'll give you that. And then the Bills don't need Milano. I would say that was right. Dorian Williams stepped up. I think there were times where they did miss his type of player on the field, and I think that's why you saw him jump right back into the starting rotation right when he got back healthy, but they did not really miss a beat in the linebacker core until Bernard also went out, and you saw what happened with the Ravens. But I think that I believe Milano is going to be back, but under some sort of restructured deal. On the other hand, did not do as well. Epinesa leads the team in sacks. He was second behind Rousseau, who had 8. Epinesa had 6. He was tied with Von Miller. Not good to me. Bills win the AFC East, but are one and done in the playoffs. I was half right. They won the AFC East again, but won 2 games in the playoffs. I did say I hope I was wrong on that one. And then the last one, I didn't come close. I bought into the Dalton Kincaid Kool-Aid. I said he would finish top 4 in targets, receptions, and yards. He was 15th in targets. He was 25th in receptions and 28th in yards just with tight ends. He was 44, 75 targets, 448 yards. I don't think he was higher than 53 yards in a single game. And he dropped a massive catch in the AFC Championship. Dalton Kincaid, which was a hot topic when Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott talked on Thursday. He needs to get bigger. People will blame the injury. I will not be blaming the injury. You drafted him where you did, and he had high expectations this year, and he failed. And he right now is not... He is a glaring example of why you do not draft tight ends in the first round because they very rarely ever pan out. Brock Bowers is the exception, not the rule. But Phil, you did really well. I did really bad, and we'll try again next year.
Yeah, I mean, even trying to figure out. Sorry, give me half a second. Okay. Even Laporta had an amazing rookie season as a top-tier tight end, and then dropped into absolutely nothingness as I had him on pretty much every fantasy
team. They didn't need him.
No, that's true. The Bills could have used any kind of receiver weapon outside of Shakir. And that's the other thing with Bean, not to go back to him, but Dawson Knox, I know he was 3rd round, but you paid him this massive contract, and he's doing absolutely nothing, literally. And you drafted another tight end who's also so far a bust on top of him. So that's great. Yeah, we did all right. I mean, Dalton Kincaid it stings looking at, yeah, that's fair. Just go off camera. I wish Miller got to 8. The Bills' offense did amazing, and as long as Baylon Spector wasn't out there, the linebacker core did all right.
Hopefully he's not back. But, yeah, that will conclude the Bills. They won't be on unless some big move happens the next show, but on the next Friday show when the Bandits are on a bye, that might be the 7th. Yeah, 7th. We'll introduce our nominees for the BSC Bills Award Show for the 4th season, and then the following Monday show we will hand out those awards. We'll move forward with the Buffalo Sabres. One game to talk about, and man, it was a doozy in a good way. Tuesday versus Boston, 7-2 victory, 2 hat-tricks. Tage got the first one. Everybody threw their hats, and then Peterka got his on an empty netter, and he got the stragglers of, I bet you there were people next to their friends or loved ones or whatever it is, and they're like, throw your hat. And he goes, I'll throw my hat if there's another one. And then there's another one, and then they got called out and like, now you have to throw your hat. And that's why there was like a couple hats thrown for Peterka. It was all the ones that claimed they would throw with another hat trick, and they weren't expecting another hat trick. Benson got the 7th one. UPL 25 of 27 saves. Shots were 33 to 27 in favor of the Bills. Sabres, 1 for 3 on the power play, 19, 26, and 5 on the season. And this is your time of the season. This is the Sabres are similar to fake spring, where, okay, it's nicer out, winter's done, and then winter's not done. And then you get second fake spring, and then you get third winter, and then it was back and forth and back and forth. The Sabres are like that when it comes to pressure. And the pressure was on them early. You were like, oh, man, this team might actually be good. And then they faded. Went on that 13-game losing streak. It's like, we got fooled. And then they got good again because the pressure's off. And I'm waiting for the collapse once again once the end of February hits, when they're like not back in it, but they're within grasp, or they're like 6 points back. And then it's like, oh, man, maybe they can make a run. Should they make it? Additions at the trade deadline, and then the pressure's back on them, and then they fade again. So the Sabres are, to me, like fake spring. And this is the start of it. 7-2, great game, fantastic. Boston stunk, but yeah, they're my equivalent of fake spring.
Yeah, in the last 10 games, they're 5-5. Before
not going to
that,
do much with it.
5-8 before that. If you add those 3 other losses, so same thing. It's great in spurts. Sure, it shows some kind of promise, but that's where we've been the last 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 14 years. Until they go on a 8-2 run in a 10-game span, it's just not enough. It's exciting. Honestly, I don't even know if exciting is the right word. It's good for them. We'll put it that way. Congrats on the big win. Boston's annoying. Good job beating them. Congrats on the Hatties. I did see a post a little while ago, and I forgot what all the teams do. But there was a post saying what every single team does with hat-trick hats. And it was pretty interesting.
I saw that, yeah.
Most of them are donated. I think one of them held it for 24 hours if you wanted to try to get your hat back, and then it was donated. But I don't know, I thought it was really interesting to see what each team does with the hats from Hatricks, and the Sabres had a lot of hats from 2 Hatricks. So good for them, and if they do get donated, good for the donation. Yay, hats.
Yeah, a lot of people walk to their cars with a cold head. You wear that, you don't have to throw it. But they are in the conversation of Elias Pettersson. If they make a big swing and they add a player like that, I am going to be very happy, but I'm going to ask what took so stinking long. And this goes back to Kevin Adams saying, hey, you can't just mortgage the future and all that kind of crap he was saying with the palm trees, where we're like, not everybody has a no trade clause. There are players out there that you can go get. They have to come to Buffalo because they don't have a choice. And you saying blah, blah, blah about not wanting to, you want players that want to be in Buffalo. There's no player that wants to be in Buffalo. Like the players that you signed for agency, it's because they had nowhere else to go and they're trying to get some sort of resurrection of a career, i.e. Jason Zucker, to come here and perform well so they can get another big contract somewhere else.
Like, hey, look what I did with this terrible team over here.
Exactly.
Sign me.
Yeah. Nobody wants to come to Buffalo because you have 14 years of losing. That's why nobody wants to come here. They claim they want to come here, but it's because it's the last
The Bills
resort.
went through the exact same thing.
So you need to break this drought. That's why I said from the get-go they needed to make a big addition to their top 6. They didn't, and if they get this across the line, yes, it's going to be very great because you get one of the young, great players in the league, but it goes back to why are you doing this when you're so far out, when you didn't have a pulse to start. But that will end the Sabres talk. We got 2 games that we'll talk about on Monday. But before we get into the Bandits preview, let's go over our first sponsor of the show, Tap That Tap Room.
Tap That Tap Room is at 363 Delaware Street in Tonawanda, New York. They are Buffalo's first women-owned self-pour bar featuring 30 consistently rotating taps, offering a wide variety of ciders, sours, seltzers, beers, and malt beverages.
And you can check out and try that giant selection on Friday. If you're listening to this on Friday, you can go there from 3 to 7. If you're listening to this on Saturday, go there next Friday. But the whole beer wall is discounted. That is when you can go out there and try and find your new favorite, because, Phil, they have something
for everyone.
I squeezed it in a different time here. Then on Saturday, the 1st at 7:30, the Bandits Watch Party. There are plenty of places around town that host the Bandits Watch Parties. No knock against them, but it is nothing like Tap That Tap Room does. Ticket giveaway at halftime. If you win, guess what? You get free tickets to the next Bandits home game. You don't even have to spend any money to do it. You just got to show up at Tap That Tap Room. The game is on every channel, or every TV, I should say. It's on every channel as well. The sound's going to be on as well. And we say it every time. There's no place like Tap That Tap Room to watch a Buffalo Bandits game. When you go there, it's not like, oh, they're also showing the Bandits game. No, that is priority number 1. The people that show up
the only priority.
That's their only priority, and that's why the sound is on those TVs. When you go there, you're expecting and you will see other Buffalo Bandits fans. So if you didn't or couldn't get a ticket to this game, whatever it is, Tap That Tap Room is a great backup plan to go to. And especially if they're on the road, that's your primary place to go to watch these games, because there's other Bandits fans there. When Bandits score, you're going to go around, high five other Bandits fans. It's like hanging out with a bunch of your friends in a bar. You just go up and self-pour your own drinks. It's by far the best place around the world to watch the Buffalo Bandits games, and I will stand by that, and I will die on that hill. So if you want to find out what else they got going on, check out their Facebook page, and to find out what's on tap and what's on deck, check out tapthattaproom.com. Bandits versus Albany, rematch of the finals. Last time we saw these two teams take place in Banditland, Buffalo was hoisting the new NLL Cup. They swept the Albany Firewolves. Buffalo's coming in 5-0. Albany is struggling this season, 2-6. Buffalo goes for number 1, 16 goals per game. Albany down at 7, 11.88. Goals against, it's very similar to what I just read. Buffalo in second, 9.4. Albany down at 8th at 11.75, which is incredible. Going 2-6, Phil. And Albany has a +1 goal differential. It's insane what type of season they've had. Power play, though, very different. Buffalo's at 38%, 12th in the league. Albany on the power play is 48%, 6th in the league. And then penalty kill. Buffalo is 3rd in the league at 60%. Albany, 49 at 12.
Yeah, this game gives me a feeling, which I don't love, of the Toronto game earlier in the year already,
100%.
Where you have a desperate team at 2-6. You have a undefeated Buffalo team. You have a rematch of the finals, and you have two teams that do not like each other. So I expect a very similar game to the Toronto game, unless Buffalo gets off to the hot start we asked them to get off to last time against Toronto, and kind of puts Albany away a little bit early to kind of keep tempers and everything under control. If it is a back and forth, nonstop kind of action game, I think the penalties are going to be flying. I think the refs are going to be very involved trying to keep everything under control. And I think it's going to get pretty nasty, because these teams don't like each other, never have. Even when Albany was last place in the league, Buffalo still, for some reason, really didn't like them. I don't really know what the issue was back then, but now they have a true reason to not like them, and Albany not like Buffalo. So I could see this becoming a very similar game to the Toronto, a desperate team, and arguably some pretty big rivals between these two teams.
Yeah, and we have known for a while, and covering this team, this is our 4th year covering this team, so we've known what happened the last 3 years. 21-22, Bandits 2-0. They went 1-0 in the playoffs. That was back when they still had Rematch, Benny, O'Connor. Remember that year where I was like, man, I really don't want to face Albany in the first round. And then you got Albany. And it's like, oh no. And I think they won like 11-5 or something like that. I remember Texas John was here and we went to the Bandits game. Then we went bowling after. 2022-23, they went 1-1 in the regular season. That was the year that Albany was, I think, a 3-win team before they drafted Dyson Williams. They lost the opening game of the season, and everybody's freaking out. We're like, calm down, game one. Then they went on to make the finals and win. Phil, they won. And then last year, they went 0-2 in the regular season, 2-0 in the playoffs. So the last 3 years, this team is 3-3 against the Albany Firewolves. They're 3-0 in the playoffs, but the regular season they seem to struggle. But you're kind of looking at the numbers, 6 games, so you got a big sample size. For Albany, you only have 1 year sample size of Kurtz and Simmons, but they lit it up in those 4 games, I should say, because last year you had 2 regular season games and 2 playoff games. So 4 game sample size for Kurtz, 20 points. He was shooting 33%. Simmons, 27 points, but he was only shooting 19%. You had Paulus right now, who did not play in game 1 of the 4 games last year, but he was shooting 30%. I know he hasn't been playing this year. Same with Longboat. It was more of the secondary scorers that have bit the butt of the Buffalo Bandits a lot. I mean, you had Firth, who scored 5 in game 2 of the finals last year, shooting 31%. Walker's 31 points, 23% shooting. So it's like I said, it's a lot of the secondary shooters that hurt Buffalo. Kurtz and Simmons are going to get theirs, but you got to limit what the secondary scoring does. It's good that for the Buffalo Bandits that the secondary scoring is not as it was last year, but they kind of improved in some areas, and some of the players that they were relying on last year just haven't been in the lineup this year, whether it's due to holdout or injuries. But we'll go over more players. But the biggest player that I want to stand out, and we kind of called this in the Philly game. We're like, okay, this all the numbers that we're looking at right now, the lack of block shots versus Philly, this seems like a big Chase Frazier type of game. It seems less like a Danacoke and a Buchanan game in and around the net, and they didn't struggle, but it was not a 2-3 goal game for those two. It was a 3-goal, 4-assist night for Chase Frazier. To me, Chris Cloutier stands out. And I'm excluding Josh Byrne and Dane Smith because they always get their points. I'm looking at the secondary score. Clooch, in the 6 games that I took a look at here, is it 6? No, it's not 6. Yeah, it's 6 games. I'm sorry. 6 games because I excluded the first year because Rezateris and Benny were still there and the team was looking really different. So of the 6 game sample size, Clooch, 16 goals, 15 assists, 31 points. That is second on the team behind just Josh Byrne and Dane Smith, but he's shooting 39% on Doug Jamieson. So to me, and this is the second game he'll be back off injury, including the bye week that he used to get a little bit more healthy and rest up. I think this is going to be a big Clooch game. I think he's probably going to go something like 4 goals, 2 assists for 6 points in this one and shooting a pretty good clip because 39% in 6 games is a pretty good stat.
All the numbers. This team is ridiculous. I don't know how many times we have to say it, but those 3 especially. I mean, you look at Smith, Byrne, like you said, we already know about them, but like 6 games and 31 points is just a monster number to average per game for a secondary scorer. Like you said, 39% shooting, really, really high. And with him getting that game under his belt last week or 2 weeks ago now, then having a week off to even fully recover after that. So knock some of the rust off from injury, rest up from after it, got a goal in that game to shake that off as well, get something kind of moving. And then in this game, hopefully he can just kind of take the momentum and really go with it. This team, for as great as they're playing, complains all the time, and in a good way. It's not a bad thing, but they complain about having these bye weeks and how like slow their season's starting. I feel like they don't get enough credit for playing the way they are with all these bye weeks and how choppy the beginning of their season really has been with all these other teams playing games week in and week out. They're just, yes, you can say they're a little more tired and banged up, but at the same time, they're fresher. They're just more into it, and they're just more ready to be on the roll kind of thing. And the Bandits just keep stopping and going. For them to come out every single game with the same intensity and the same ability every single time for a team that clearly has said multiple times they do not like the bye weeks this early in the season. They want to just play the games, get on a roll, and the way their schedule goes, it's not happening that way, obviously. But for them to come out and play the way they continue to come out and play after these bye weeks is really impressive.
Yeah, and for all the complaining about the buys, 12 games in 10 weeks coming up, boys. So hopefully you're all rested up and ready to go. Because I mean,
brutal.
you look at a team like Rochester. It's going to be week 10. They've played every single week. Like, I think it would be different for them if they weren't struggling.
Yes.
But they're struggling, and it's like, oh man, we have another game, and we're losing again, and we got another game. It's like, can we get a bye week so we can try to figure all this out? But we'll go over the forwards for the Albany Firewolves right now. Again, 2-6 right now, struggling. I think your idea that it's going to be, it's got similar vibes to the Toronto Rock game because this team is so desperate for a victory, and they just hate the Bandits. You know, it's not a trap game because they got a bye week coming up, but it's one that you really want to go 6-0 before this long stretch of games versus difficult opponents coming up. So if you can get to 6-0, the playoffs are looking really sweet, and you're going to have a great stranglehold over top of the number 1 seed and try to make it so playoffs have to go through Bandit Land, and nobody wants that. So forwards, righties, Ty Kurtz, former 17th overall pick in 2022. He's got 40 points on the year right now, shooting 21%. 3-7-10 on the power play. John Piatelli, he's played in 6 games. He's currently on the practice squad, so keep an eye on for him. 11 points. You know, former 3rd-round pick in 2022. Alex Simmons is the golden child on this team. 4th overall pick 2 years ago. 49 points, shooting 21%. Power play kind of runs through him. He's 5-4-9. Travis Longboat, one of the secondary scorers. He's on the PUP list right now. He's only played in 2 games, but he had 7 points in those 2 games. Keep an eye on him. Callum Crawford's currently still in the IR. He was listed as out last week, so I don't think he's going to be playing because it's very difficult to go from straight out unless you got a questionable or a doubtful tag. You got to want to – it seems like a lot of times, at least this year on the injury report for the NLL, if you're listed as out, it's going to be very difficult to come back the next week unless you see a little bit of a gap. Remember, Chris Cloutier was listed as doubtful. And then it was doubtful again, and then it was questionable, I believe, and then he was finally back. So keep an eye on the injury report. We'll put that out on all the social media sites once they put that out late Friday. For the lefties, Sam Firth, like I mentioned, last year, 5 goals in Game 2 of the finals. 7 games, 17 points. Ethan Walker, the very quiet, underappreciated lefty for this team. Former 10th overall pick in 2020, 7 games, 39 points right now. He's kind of the leader on the power play with the distributor, 5, 7, and 12. Dyson Williams, it's going to be, it is Tucker out lymphoma night. It is Game 1 of the Tucker Cup for the Buffalo Bandits, and Dyson Williams is in the house. So I expect him to have a big game because he did when he faced Las Vegas for their Tucker out lymphoma night. So keep an eye on Dyson Williams right now. 1st overall pick last year. 29 points on the year right now, 9 points on the power play. Marshall Paulus, he's currently on the holdout list, only played in 2 games. And then Carson Moyer, former draft pick of the Albany Firewolves, signed 2 games ago. He's got 3 points. So it's a different looking forward group than we have seen last year, all 4 games. But you know, the secondary scoring with the Walkers, with the Dyson Williams, it's 4 guys really leading the charge for Albany, and it's going to be very interesting to see how Buffalo's defense goes up against a team that they have struggled with in the past. You know, I would assume Zach Belter's back in the lineup. I don't believe we're going to see Justin Martin in this one. I'm pretty much going to guess that he's going to be out in this one for another bye, and then you have a full 4 weeks rest for Justin Martin because his injury is a little bit different than Zach Belter's. Zach Belter's was he cleared all the concussion protocols. We already heard all that. It was kind of just giving him a little bit extra rest. Getting him back in the defensive lineup is going to be huge, but not having a Justin Martin for a team that has struggled in the past stopping this type of offense because they play different than everybody else, it's going to be very interesting to see how they D up versus this forward group.
Yeah, I think the 2 big names, like you mentioned already, Walker, I think he might be slightly supplanting Kurtz on this team as just the second threat, so I don't even know if you can really consider him a secondary option. I think he might be slowly eking into being the top two on their team right now. As
I'll
far
put it like
as
this. I think Kurtz has a lot of Chase Frazier vibes where he can put up a 6 spot that I don't think Ethan Walker can put up. I
Walker's
think
just
Ethan
more
Walker's great at
consistent.
getting 6, 7, 8 points, but I think Kurtz is more dangerous being able to put up a 6 goal spot.
Yeah, and I mean Walker in the 6 game set that you showed had the most points against the Bandits out of anybody, so he's a bit scary for them. And then the other one, if he plays, I do remember this, and then your stats also back it up for the secondary scoring. Longboat did hurt the Bandits quite a bit. He was a
Yes.
name you kept hearing over and over, and you're like, why can we not stop this Longboat guy? Like, get him out of here. In the 6 games, he has 8 goals, 8 assists, 16 points. Looks like he was truly their secondary scorer out of the top, other than the top three. He was next up, and I do remember his name being called over and over as just somebody who's somehow one of those secondary scorers, just tearing up the Bandits and getting important goals when you're like, okay, this guy is kind of a random player. Why are we not able to stop him or shut him down? So if he does end up playing, he's one to keep an eye on, like you mentioned. Just in general, the Bandits seem to have struggled with him a little bit.
Yeah, we'll go over defense and transition now. A player that I've really liked who's kind of having a quietly good season, Patrick Cossack, former 16th overall pick in 2021. 3, 4, and 7. He's their threat in the transition game. 50 loose balls. He's got 8 block shots. Will Johansson, he's a stud. I really was excited to see how he would play this year after missing his whole rookie year. 7th overall pick in 2022. He's another threat in the transition game. 4 goals. Joe Nardella, he's 67% at the dot, so this is Connor Farrell's true first good test at the dot this year. So we'll see how he makes out this year. I believe I had the stats. I'm scrolling up for it. In the finals, game 1, Connor Farrell went 6 of 24 versus Joe Nardella. And then in game 2, he went 15 versus 17. So Nardella got 2 better than him in game 2. So he was able to adjust in game 2. We'll see how he is able to fare against Nardella in this game. Zach Manson, a big addition to the defensive corp, number 16. Volkov, another young player back there, 14th overall pick last year. Got Mike Byrne back there. And then this is where the injuries hurt. You got Colton Watkinson, who's currently on the IR. He was listed as out last week. I do not expect him to play. Jackson Nishimura on the IR. He was listed as out last week. I do not expect him to play. And then John Wagner, who was the massive addition last year that led them on the defensive end through the playoffs. He was also on the IR, and he's also listed out last week. So I do not expect him to play in this one. Chakowski, he's back there, played in 6 games. So they're hurting on the defensive end. And that is affecting Doug Jamieson right now, where we can tie in 11.31 goals against and a 79 save percentage. So he's making the saves, but he's letting in a lot more goals than we have seen out of this Doug Jamieson. It seems like he's back in that role of a 3 and 15 team right now, rather than the team that we saw last year, because they're so injured on the back end. This is a game where Buffalo, if they get out early, they're able to capitalize on a defense that is injured and broken right now. If they can get out early, you can frustrate this team, and you'll have some wiggle room if this Albany offense is able to figure out the Buffalo Bandits defense.
Yeah, I mean, Jameson's save percentage is still pretty solid.
Right.
79% is what you're kind of looking for. He was 80% last year, so not horrible, but his goals per game is a whole goal extra right now compared to last year, and that is a lot in the NLL. I mean, I know 1 goal doesn't sound brutal, but it is, and it can be the difference. As Albany has seen with 3 overtime losses, it is the difference between winning and losing a game, that 1 extra
5
goal.
and 3 and 2 and 6.
Right. So, I mean, it's a very big difference for their season and puts them in a very rough spot. Like you said, the misses they have currently on defense are huge. Like, if you go to their caused turnovers as a team, it's really not anything that exciting. You go to their block shots as a team through 8 games, really not that great. It's not horrible, and their caused turnovers aren't horrible, but when you have Bandits players kind of equaling caused turnovers from your team, and the Bandits have played 5 games compared to your 8, that's not great for your defense, and a lot of that is because you're missing some of your top defensive players. And like you said, Watkinson and Wagner especially. I mean, those are not only 2 of their best ones, but 2 of their kind of leaders on that back end that can help settle a back end down and help really organize and communicate. We've seen what happens when Nick Weiss or Steve Priolo or Dawson are all in the penalty box for extended periods of time. You see the defense get a little bit out of sorts, a little bit out of whack, and their communication seems to just change that little bit. And you can tell how much these players, even if it's not necessarily black and white stats, a lot of times it is simply communication and organization on defense that is huge. And when you're missing players like this, there's just less of a leader on that defense, and it just causes a little bit more chaos, which helps the Bandits, who have such a high-flying offense with way too many people to cover. It should give them a lot of mismatches in a good way. And Jameson, while playing okay stats-wise, he just hasn't been the Jameson we've seen in previous years. I mean, he was absolutely incredible last year, and I feel like you just don't quite see the same level of him playing this year. And like you said, a lot of that is the defense, but he's also, it's the same thing we saw with Vince at the beginning of last year, where he just wasn't coming up with those big saves. So even if your defense is letting you down, yes, some of that can be pinned on them, but usually Jameson's there to bail them out. That's what a really, really good goalie can do, is bail out the poor defensive play. And right now he just doesn't seem to be making those extra big saves that we saw a lot of him doing last year.
Yeah, so we'll see if Buffalo is able to take advantage of a struggling Albany team. You know, we said it in the past all last year. It's going to be the similar story this year. Is Albany plays such a different style of lacrosse than any other team in this league, and they have given the Buffalo Bandits fits in the regular season. Yes, they took care of business in the playoffs both times they faced them last year, sweeping the series in the finals. But regular season, the last 3 years, they're 3-3, and Albany has been a thorn in the side of the Buffalo Bandits. So if they're able to play discipline, which should be a little bit easier now that Nathan Grennan's not sitting on the Albany team, and he was one of the biggest pests. But Alex Simmons seems to have the number of Buffalo Bandits when it comes to being that pest and being that little gnat on the side of your ear that just won't go away and keeps chirping. And I love Alex Simmons' game. He's fun to watch, but when you're facing him, it's not as fun. So, Phil, predictions, we went over the players. We kind of went over the history of what these two organizations have gone through the last 3 years. What is your prediction for Bandits versus Albany, first time this year and first time since Buffalo raised the cup on them?
Yeah, I think the big thing for the Bandits and the defense is to get away from this 14 number, because it's ugly. Even though they're winning, it's not really where you want to be letting the amount of goals in. So I'm gonna lower that. I think the defense and Vince get it together and play a full game. They were dominating in the first half of the Philly game. Then even Priolo admitted on his podcast that they kind of turned off the switch a little bit there until Philly got back in on their 6-goal run.
And went down a little.
Yeah, they just knocked it down and then cranked it back up to finish out the fourth and get the win. So I think they stay hot the whole time, especially with it being a rivalry. It's a lot of what we talked about with the Philly game, is that there's just not enough bad blood between those two teams to keep your energy level to the max. Like if you're crushing Toronto, you're going to keep that energy up because you don't like them. Same with Albany. If you come out really hot and really have a great first half and come out swinging and knock them down, I don't think it's the kind of game you're going to turn that off because you don't like each other. So I do see this game being a little bit more defensive in a positive way for the Bandits. So I'm going to go, the Bandits offense just averaging 16 is insane. Like, how do you go against it? But it's such a high number. I'm going to go 14 because they've hit 13 at least once. We're going to 14, 10.
I was wondering if you were going to go 10 there.
I was going to go 9, but we'll give them 10.
I got 15-12. I think the goal scoring is not going to be an issue. We have yet to see them have a really
They're so good. And their power play is terrible.
They've scored 15, 18, 13, 15, 19 for an average of 16. I think they'll get to that 15 goal mark again, and if you do that, I can't see Albany putting up 15 or more. I got Albany getting 12, so I got Buffalo 15-12 victory. This was a game that we all did pick Buffalo on our BSC picks that come out every Wednesday, so check out that. I'm currently leading by 1. Producer Pat's in second, down a game back, and then Phil's in third, 2 games back. So we're all neck and neck. But this was a game where I was very close to hedging my bet with the predictions here, because if Buffalo's not going to go undefeated. Like, as much as they seem like the perfect team, it's so difficult to go 18 straight games, and their winning streak is what? Let me count here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 game winning streak right now. Ever since that Panther City lost in overtime last year.
I don't even know what it is. If it's at home, is it even higher?
It's probably even higher. Let me see. I'm not going to go back and count right now. They got a 3-game
We'll look it
winning
up
streak
later.
this year.
We'll throw it on the socials.
We'll throw it on the socials. So eventually they're going to end up dropping one. Like, you can't go, what is that, another 13 games, so it would be 27 game winning streak in the regular season, like from last year to through the regular season.
And then you have to do it through playoffs. So
yeah, it's very unlikely to happen, but I think they're going to drop one at some point. If this is the one they drop, I would not be super surprised. I was very close to, like I said, hedging my bet on this one, but I got them winning 15-12.
Yeah, I just... Man, they're so
good.
To bet against.
Yeah, it's
just
if they're better than a 50-50 pick. So I mean, why not just keep picking them to win? Because more times than not, you're going to walk away with a victory. The last 13 times, 14 times, you've been right. So just going to keep doing that. But we'll go on to the milestone minute here. The fastest milestone minute in all the land. All these possible milestones can be found on X and Blue Sky at Buffalo Sports Co. We post them on the lead up to each game between Friday and Saturday. I don't push them all at once because who wants to read like 5 or 7 or 12 for this one tweets right in a row. But we will put them on our social media sites. So if you miss one and you don't want to listen back, you can check them out there. So Phil, there's a lot more than the last time. So in a way, we go. Nick Weiss is 1 assist away from 100 for his career. He averages .67 a game. Chase Frazier is 4 assists away from 100 for his career. He averages 1.25 a game. Josh Byrne, 3 loose balls away from 400 for his career. He averages 4.23 a game. Chase Frazier, 2 loose balls away from 300 for his career. He averages 3.87 a game. Ian McKay is 6 loose balls away from 600 for his career. He averages 6.83 a game. Connor Farrell, who did have it and then they took it away, is 1 loose ball away from 100 for his career. He averages 8.25 a game. Cam Wires is 1 loose ball away from 100 for his career. He averages 4.31 a game. If Nick Weiss plays on Saturday, we'll move into a tie with Kevin Brownell for 7th place in Buffalo Bandits history in games played. Chase Frazier is 5 points away from tying Troy Cordingley for 10th place in Buffalo Bandits history. He averages 2.96 a game. Justin Martin, if he does play, is 1 cause turnover away from tying Alex Hill for 8th place in Buffalo Bandits history. He averages .53. And then Connor Farrell is 4 face-off wins away from tying Tom Fair for 10th place in Buffalo Bandits history. He's 5 away from tying Chase Frazier for 9th and 20 away from tying Rob Kirkby for 8th place. He averages 17.9 a game for his career.
I like only semi-listening to see, because mainly then I just pick up your screw-ups, and I didn't hear any. I don't think I really heard any stumbles.
I got 1 for the Chase Frazier. I said 69 instead of 96, and then I corrected it.
That's a funny screw-up, though, so that's all right. We'll just call it as comedy gold. You did it on purpose.
We are part comedy. If you look at the podcast description.
We are.
We're such funny guys.
Hilarious. A lot of milestones, like you said. You went from, 3 to 4 to a lot.
It's all the loose balls. Like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 loose balls, and all of them are like within 6. So go take care of it.
Everybody get loose balls. Everybody.
All these could be accomplished. Like, it's not like any of these are like, okay, you got to get 9. It's like the toughest one is Ian McKay with 6 loose balls because he's playing forward. Like, that's all these are possible. But we will go over the NLL outlook now. We got 6 other games to talk about, and we'll just go into them briefly because we're close to the hour mark, which we like to keep it at. 4-3 Vancouver, heading to the 2-4 Halifax Thunderbirds Friday at 6:30. 3-3 Calgary Roughnecks, needing to get back over 500 versus the 4-3 Ottawa Black Bears. I saved it all up for this last second here, Phil. Trying to stay above 500 Friday at 7 p.m. The 3-6 Rochester Nighthawks, like we said, have yet to have a bye. Head to the 5-2 Philadelphia Wings Saturday at 8 o'clock. 2-5. 2-game winning streak. Toronto Rock heads to the 5-3 Colorado Mammoth Saturday at 9:30. 4-3 Georgia Swarm head to the 2-5 Las Vegas Desert Dogs Saturday at 10 o'clock. Game 2 for Vegas of the Tucker Cup. And then 5-2 Saskatchewan Rush heads to the 3-4 San Diego Seals Saturday at 10 o'clock. 6 other games, Phil. Which ones stand out to you?
A lot of big games for some teams. Halifax trying to stay out of the basement. Vancouver trying to prove they're a top team. Ottawa, I have no idea. I don't get it. I don't get
Last
it.
in the league in scoring.
You have one of, again, for right now, we'll say one of the top players in the world. I'm not going to say the, because he's struggling a little bit. I know you already mentioned secondary scoring needs to help him and pick it up a little bit, but similar to, again, the goalie kind of comparison, Teat is just not able to play Josh Allen hero ball so far this season. Teams have been able to stop him. I mean, last game he had 0 goals. 3 assists is not enough for him, and he
did account for, he had a hand in on 75% of their goals though, Phil. Come on, man.
That is true. But yeah, he's just not able to do
4.
what Teat has been really, really, really good at, which is just scoring from every angle, every shot he could possibly take. He's just struggling a little bit with that, and it's just wild to see a team have random really good games and then have random really bad games. No idea what Ottawa is. Calgary trying to get back over 500. Rochester, I don't see them beating Philly in Philly because Rochester's struggling, and like you said, haven't had a bye week. They
Such
are
a
looking
weird
for
statement to say. Like before the season, if we were to say that Rochester is going to go to Philly and probably not going to win, we would have been lunacy in the offseason.
Toronto looks like they are right back, and I don't like it. Don't like it at all. I also don't like that their owner was right about them starting terrible and then climbing out of the basement to make playoffs. I hope Colorado wins and puts them right back in the basement. Georgia, 3-game losing streak. They need to do something. If they lose this game, they are in crisis mode, I think. Las Vegas has been on the rise. I'm not going to try to take that away from them, but this is a big game that Georgia needs to get back to proving they are an elite team. And then same with San Diego. Same exact thing. If you lose this game, that's nothing against Saskatchewan. They've been playing really well. I think they are one of the top teams in the league, but San Diego trying to prove that they are one of the better teams in the league. If they go to 3-5, the whole league's just literally completely upside down at this point. You got Rochester under 500, Toronto under 500, San Diego under 500, Albany under 500. Like the whole league is very flipped and weird. But this is a big week for a lot of teams.
Yeah, I think this is a big turning week for the league as a whole. You got the top team in Buffalo versus the bottom dwellers in Albany. You got 4-3 Vancouver versus 2-4 Halifax. You know, a lot of these teams are in a playoff spot going against the teams that are looking to get in a playoff spot.
Georgia,
so you can either
Las Vegas,
pull further ahead or these teams are going to inch closer. So it's almost midway through the season. There's 21 weeks. This is week 10. So it's going to be very interesting to see how everything shakes out when we talk again on Monday. But Phil, is there anything else with this episode before we shut it down, get ready to head to Bandit Land, and then rewatch the game on Sunday and go over our notes and talk to everybody on Monday?
Yeah, enjoy the press box again. Have fun up there with your bird's eye view, getting all the deets and the scoops from the press box.
So on our next show, like I said, unless there's some major thing with the Bills, we won't talk about them until Friday. We got 2 Sabres games that'll be taking place this weekend. And then Monday, obviously, now with the Bills season concluding, we are majority Buffalo Bandits now, where they're not sharing as much time with other teams because Sabres, who really cares? But yeah, we'll go over the final. We'll wrap up the Buffalo Bills season on the Friday and Monday show next week. But that concludes this episode. Have fun down in Banditland, everybody. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Buffalo Sports Collective. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, and TikTok at Buffalo Sports Collective, and on X and Blue Sky at Buffalo Sports Co. Visit our website at buffalosportscollective.com. My Week 10 power rankings are out now. Go read them, please. Check out our store on our link tree, on our social media sites, or at the shop tab at the top of the website. Follow our channel wherever you listen to podcasts, and make sure you leave us that review on Apple and Spotify. Till next time. Bye-bye.